Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Melanie Tana, and I make videos about books, movies, TV, video games, the stories found within them, and what I love about them. Lately, I have been reading the series The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. My last video was a part 1 discussing book 11, Knife of Dreams, and in that part 1 I went from the prologue all the way through chapter 17. And maybe I should have gone a bit longer on that part 1 because now this part 2 is going to be really long and I don't want to make it 3 parts. So, for those of you who don't know, I kind of do a little summary, just talk about my thoughts as I'm reading. If you have not read The Wheel of Time, this is very spoilery. I will not be holding anything back regarding spoilers, at least for the book I'm reading. So, I don't know what happens next in each book. But yeah, so for this book, book 11, I will be discussing chapter 18 through chapter 37 and then the prologue. So a lot of chapters to cover. Bear with me, I'll try to be succinct, though my notes got less succinct the more important stuff happened, and it's a lot of important stuff because it's a lot of main character things. Also, I really enjoyed this book so much more than book 10. It's starting to feel like things are happening, and we're actually getting events from the main characters. When I was going over my notes last night, recalling everything that happened, I was like, wow, this has substance in this book. Whereas in book 10, I just really felt like I was waiting for the thing to happen and it never did. So, there's a lot of info to cover. In chapter 18, Rand POV, he's talking to Loial, and during their discussion, at mention of his friends, Mat and Perrin, Rand starts to see visions of them, just kind of like Mat did. He also gets a vision of the man who saved him at Shadar Logoth while he was fighting Samael. Sam-I-Am. I struggle. And he does not know who this person was. Logain comes in and informs Rand about events regarding the Ashima and things happening. He mentions to Rand that he believes Mazrim Time? Is that how you say his name? Time? The head Ashiman, that Logain thinks he's a dark friend. And then in this chapter, Loial's mother shows up and he's been avoiding her because she wants him to get married and he will have no choice in the matter. And then Nynaeve, at the end of the chapter, senses a storm coming. As we know, she was once a wise one, listened to the wind. Turns out she was to become a very powerful Aes Sedai. And yeah, she senses a storm coming, ironically, because the next book is called The Gathering Storm. And Rand starts to wonder about Tarmon Gai'dan. Something about Loial and his desire to not get married quite yet and his inability to have a choice in the matter is very interesting to me because there's a lot of power, very drastic power dynamics in the Wheel of Time, especially between different genders. And I mean, in some cases, it is the men in charge who are doing bad things. That's not true. But we're really given a lot of women who just are so harsh, and the men don't have a choice. This issue with bonding men as warders against their will, that's appalling, And I don't know, and everything that Mat went through with the Queen is just interesting to me, and I think that I just feel I feel bad, almost as a woman too, because if I was in that place, I would be uncomfortable with that. And it sheds a light on some issues that, in the reverse, we don't realize would be a problem for men. I think especially Mat's storyline. But I just think that's interesting. There's a lot of powerful women, and I have no issue with women being powerful. But it's just a question in the whole series between men, women, and it doesn't matter all the time if it's man or woman, but just people having power who shouldn't have power or who abuse the power that they are given or attain. It's interesting. So, already on a spiel, but going on to chapter 19. Loial gets married. It's very quick. It's quick and to the point, basically. He loves his wife, but he's also sad because he really wants to continue writing his book. And he also has this honorable desire to be there and to help out. And this comes up when the other Ogier, when they discuss leaving things behind as things are kind of getting bad, and it's just in their minds time for them to move on. And Loial's like, no, we stay and fight. We help them. We are by their side. And he notices Trollocs approaching. It's happening. So what he's talking about is happening, and he's not going to stand down. Both Rand and Cadsuane, in different ways. I think Rand smells them. Cadsuane, I think it's with her ter'angreal, can sense the shadow spawn. I think there were like 100,000 Trollocs is what I wrote down, which is a lot. It's a big battle. I've been waiting for this. While fighting the Trollocs and Rand seizing Sidon, though that half of the source is now cleansed, Rand is still kind of going crazy because he has Lews Therin in his mind and his body, and Lews Therin takes control of the power and of channeling. And he channels a few things I thought were interesting that it mentioned. It was Death Gates, Arrows of Fire, and Blossoms of Fire, among a few other things, I think. And after the battle, Lews Therin won't let go. He just wants to die, as per usual. He does let go when it is assured to him that we'll die in the last battle. You know, it's gonna happen. So, poor Rand, poor Lews Therin. He's really going through it. But then going on to chapter 20, Rand looks over the remains of the battle. The Seanchan are shooting down ravens, and the Asha'man are burning bodies. Loial says goodbye to Rand, which is sad. There's a lot of goodbyes in this book, or more important goodbyes, like between Aviendha and Elaine, and in this case between Loial and Rand. But Rand congratulates him and asks Loial to close the other way gates that Rand hasn't taken care of yet. And then Bashere comes in and says that the Daughter of the Nine Moons is going to arrive in 3 days. Logain and Bashere think it's a trap because of how it's set up. They're like, only so many people can come with you. Sounds very ransomy, right? Like, don't involve the police. I'm like, okay, Daughter of the Nine Moons, we know where you are. But anyway, and then the POVs between Nynaeve and Lan. Lan does not want Nynaeve to channel too much. She wants to heal and help everybody after the battle, but he has to command her not to. And in the Sea Folk marriage ceremony that they had when they got married, it sort of gave him authority when they were in private. So it's like, you can just say no. And Nynaeve hates this because she's Nynaeve. And then Lan talks about wanting to help the Borderlanders. Nynaeve transports him, but not to Shinar, instead to World's End in Saldaea. So he promised to Nynaeve that if on his journey men asked to join him, he would have to accept. And she made him promise that, so when he went on this journey, he would be safe and he would have men at his side. Because he's kind of a loner, he's very depressed, he's struggling with everything happening with Moiraine and his non-consensual bonding with another Aes Sedai and everything, and now he is kind of like, you know, he has authority over Nynaeve, but she also has her Aes Sedai tricks, so she makes him promise, you will allow men to follow you, and we all know people want to follow Lan, like that's gonna make sense. But instead of, taking her to Shinar, she takes him to World's End so that he will be safe and he can, if he will likely gather people on his way, which will probably allow for his safety, or at least a little bit longer, keep him alive. And it's Nynaeve's way of keeping him safe. It's very powerful. And then we get the POV of a Melkir man who meets Nynaeve. She claims she's Lan's wife, and she makes him promise that he will be present at Tarmangaiden, and not makes him, but encourages him to will you stand up? Will you fight like you is your calling? And he says yeah. So pretty cool chapter, pretty powerful. I don't know why I pictured it so cinematically, but I was like, Nynaeve's not messing around, that's her husband. Chapter 21, Rand POV, they're back at the Stone of Tyr, where an inventor is working on basically a train, and Min sees, in her magical Min way, that many of the people here will die of hunger. And Rand can sense Alanna through the warder bond, but at this time, the stone is under siege, and the rebels make a deal that Darlin is going to be crowned king, and then Rand's just doing his preparation. So there's just a little bit of arranging of the people there, trying to take care of everyone, but not being able to, as is the world right now. In chapter 22, Hareen, one of the Sea Folk, meets with other members of the First 12. Min has seen a vision, and promised that Hareen will become mistress of the ships, and other people don't like her. So the possibility of this is low, but Hareen's confident because Min's never wrong. Logain makes deals with them, reassuring them that Sidon has been cleansed. And then Hareen receives notice, and this was a very devastating, dark thing that, and I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation, but that A Meyer couples, I don't know how you say it, asked for passage to Seafolk Islands. This is a very traditional thing between them, that they can always ask for passage to the Meyer people. But after investigating these people, it's discovered that they have all taken poison or given it to their children. They had a prophecy regarding the Great Hand, or the Kyodan Call, on Tremalking that Rand used to help cleanse the source and to do that great channeling. But they had a prophecy that the Great Hand would melt, and that when it did, it was time to end this experience they call the illusion, but what is known to most other cultures as just this world and this life. It's very dark, very culty. Yeah. Even talking about it in a video, I'm like, don't do that, that's not okay, and that's dark. The sea folk have these like cries of mourning for other people, because it is a very sad thing, but basically they leave the illusion, deciding it was time to move on based on the prophecy. So it's kind of a sad ending there. I think the chapter title was "To Make an Anchor Weep" or something like that, because it was enough to make these very powerful people very devastated. Anyway, chapter 23. The rebel sitters are meeting. Yahar Narishma of the Black Tower lets them know that a man nearby is channeled during their meeting, and then proposes a deal to bond 47 Ashaman to Aes Sedai to make up for the 51 Aes Sedai sisters bonded to Ashaman. He lets them know that Sidon is cleansed, and they agreed to this deal because forming circles will be easier, not to mention it will be fair for how they bonded sisters to the Ashaman. And then, throughout their discussions, because the Aes Sedai have been killed sneakily, secretly, by a male channeler, and they're not sure who it is, and they can't sort it out, they decide to arrest Halima and Delana in relation to these Aes Sedai deaths. But then Helena and Delana escape into the night. So, yeah. They've eventually got there. They eventually figured it out. I don't blame them. I don't know if I would have known had I not just been reading all the POVs. Going on to chapter 24. Egwene is rebelling in like little ways in the White Tower, the big White Tower, Elaeda's White Tower, though it is kind of crumbling socially on the inside. A lot of the Aes Sedai are sort of turning against each other. They don't get along. They don't trust each other. And she sees it as a mark of failure on Elaida. But she also has these little opportunities of rebellion. So she won't curtsy as she leaves a room. And she contradicts in little ways, but without being too open, so that she can kind of sneak her way into their hearts. She's regularly punished by the Mistress of Novices, Sylviana. One of the ways she kind of weasels her way into the hearts of these women is through the novices, who are young and impressionable, and she is the Amyrlin Seat as far as I'm concerned. She has the presence. As the rebel Aes Sedai call her mother, she kind of presents that to the novices. She comforts them when like the halls are shifting, which is a sign of the end times and spooky, and the girls are seeing ghosts, and they're young and they're impressionable and scared. She comforts them. She also gives one-on-one lessons, which allows her to show off that she knows her stuff and that she can be followed and trusted. Alviarin offers to help Egwene escape. We know that this Aes Sedai cannot be trusted, that she is a dark friend, but Egwene says, nope, I am fine right here. And then Egwene wins Beonen's loyalty back. If you don't remember, Beonen went in under disguise to Elaida, give her information, but now Egwene has won her back because she's awesome. And then there are little things that Egwene notices, like honey in her tea or a cushion on her seat, that let her know that the novices appreciate her and are endearing toward her, and that she's winning. So I think it's really cool. Going on to chapter 25, basically, Elaida is just mad because she's failing. Tar Valon is a mess. It's too scary to go outside because of the ghosts. And so it's in disarray, it's a disaster. It goes on to Mat's POV. He learns that the band has grown, the band of the Red Hand, his group of men, has grown so large, like larger than he expected. Going on to chapter 26, Tom tries to help Tuan understand Mat being ta'veren, but she finds it silly. There's a lot of things that are true, like Mat being ta'veren, or Mat seeing the Finn being like old wives' tales to her, and yet she's very superstitious in her own culture, so it's just funny. But then Tuan is admiring Mat and is surprised by his leadership. I think she calls him a lion, and it's just cute because she's like, oh, wait a minute, he knows what he's talking about. And Mat's like, I don't know anything. I'm just a gambler. But then it goes to Perrin's POV, where they're putting Fork Root in the Malden aqueducts, where the Shido camp is currently staying, where his wife is, to make the Shadow Wise Ones less of a threat. There's a moment where a ripple in the pattern startles the group, just like with the bubble of evil, with the man spewing beetles becoming a pile of beetles. Perrin sort of stamps out their fear, and they move on because he's a good leader. I'm very impressed with Perrin. But it's mostly because he wants to save his wife, but I also like that about him too. And then in the POV with Fail, she's flirting with Roland. It's very hesitant and tentative because she's, first of all, he captured her first, so he has this intent of marrying her, but she is married, and she reminds him of that. And he's like, what happens when your guy shines? Just stays there. And she's like, no, that's not it. But yeah, she's flirting with him because he could help her escape. I also don't like that. It makes me feel icky, but I think that's the point, so. And then after Fail and Galena both slap each other, they have a little fight. Galena promises to help Fail escape the following day in exchange for the Oath Rod. In chapter 27, Rand's preparing to meet the Daughter of the Nine Moons. He's only allowed to bring a certain number of people with him. And then one of the women approaches. She was wearing a disguise, and the only reason he knows this is that it flickers due to one of Cadsuane's ter'angreal. Rand recognizes her as Semirhage, if that's how you say it, one of the Forsaken, and he moves to seize Sidon in response to recognizing her, but then Lou's there and fights for control, and so it becomes like a bit of a struggle for Rand to do anything. In protecting men and raising the Dragon Scepter, Rand is on the receiving end of a ball of fire from Semirhage, which destroys the scepter and his left hand, which is crazy. In the end, Semirhage and other Sul'dam are captured. Nynaeve heals Rand's hand down to a stump, but he actually has, his vision has been impaired due to the ball of fire in his face, understandably, and it's very watery. But then Semirhage has some knowledge for some reason and talks about how Rand is going mad because Lews Therin is in his head. It's very interesting. And then the chapter doesn't even end. It goes on to Mat's POV. He's setting up attacks against the Seanchan that prove to be very strategic and effective. They're very fun to read. It's not as fun to talk about, to describe to you. And I have a hard time picturing fight scenes, so this is one of those things where I'm just like, this is what I know happened. It worked, and it sounded like Mat knew what he was talking about. He uses his old memories. But the thing about this is, like, no, Mat did not work for those experiences of the dead men's memories, but he's, like, given a tool and he uses it really well. It's like a magical ability of, like, extra battle knowledge into his, like, young 20-something-year-old brain, and he actually responds really well with it, and he does honorable things. It's not like he was imbued with goodness, he's just a good person and an effective leader, and I find that just so cool, and I'm very happy for him because the ladies love it, specifically Tuan. And then Teslen informs Mat that Jolene might bond him against his permission, and Tuan is not having it. She does not like that. She says, that's my man, without saying it necessarily. In chapter 28, Fail and company are preparing to escape. They meet Galena at an abandoned burned house to give her the Oath Rod. They're down in a basement. Galena pretends to hear something, runs upstairs, and then the basement sort of collapses on them. It's a rundown, abandoned house, so it makes sense that it could do that. And they are trapped and she leaves them behind. They recognize it's Galena's plan, basically. She didn't do it on accident. Maegdyn, is that how you say her name? Basically, Morghese in disguise, is encouraged by Fail to channel a red scarf to wave it outside to get attention from someone. It's the only thing that they could possibly use because they themselves can't reach the outside at all and it's too dangerous to climb through the rubble. And I love this moment for Fail because she is such a good leader of people in general, but of other women. There's more evidence of that later on at the end of this book, but in this scene in particular, she encourages a person who can channel a little bit to do this very difficult thing that will drain her totally and reminds her like who she is and to take her power and whatever. She doesn't even know that Morghese is Morghese, and I just think that's cool that Fail could remind this woman that she's a queen without even knowing that about her, because she can kind of imbue a person with that belief in themselves. And she's been trained well. I think she had the kind of upbringing that prepared her to be a lady of great ability and power and leadership skills. And I love that about her. I really love this scene for her. And it's very emotional, also very cinematic, because I could just feel their desperation, and I really liked that part. And then at the end of the chapter, Galena is leaving town, almost regretting that she doesn't stay behind to kill Thorava. And then that's how the chapter ends. Going on to chapter 29, Perrin is preparing to attack Malden, where the Shaido are, and he's separated those who will not be fighting so that they can stay safe. And then he has a vision of Rand missing his left hand. It's very interesting. The POV switches over to Fail, where Arain, I can't read my handwriting. Someone finds her after Thera watched Galena cause the collapse. Roland shows up with his friends to help. And then the POV switches back to Perrin, where Tam has shown up. That's Rand's dad. He asks if Rand is truly the dragon, which is, there's just some sadness to it, like, because what a great, powerful thing, but I don't think any parent would want that for their kid, you know? First of all, having a son who could channel in the first place is devastating because they believe it will make you go mad, and your life is basically over at that point. But for Rand in this case, it's more than just channeling. It's being the dragon reborn. The Perrin confirms that yes, he is the dragon. And then the battle begins, and Perrin's army of bowmen starts pushing back the Shaido, while Perrin charges forward to save his wife. This chapter is also a big one, chapter 30. In Fail's POV, Roland and company help her out. And when she gets out of the basement in the rubble, she sees like the 100 or so people who have sworn fealty to her. And I think it's really cool that so many people have followed her. And this is the thing I was talking about, that like later you see the effect she's had on people and her leadership skills. And then Roland says he will hide her until nightfall to help her escape. Then in Perrin's POV, there's a battle going on around him when Aram, a person who he met when he was a peaceful tinker, and then picked up a sword, followed Perrin and company. But Aram starts to attack him, and it's a very sad moment. Aram's kind of lost his mind. He's claiming that Perrin and Elias are shadow spawn and that they can't be trusted, that he needs to protect Fail, and Aram believes this because Masema led him there. That's very sad, and during this fight, Aram gets shot by Shaido arrows and dies. And it's just sad because Perrin thinks, like, I should have never let him leave the Tinkers. And Perrin sees Fail and kills the man who is leading her. Then he smells guilt on his wife, and he worries about why she might be feeling guilt and what could have happened to her. And then Elias leaves with Gaul to go find Chad. Tylee shows up with Savannah tied to her horse as a sign of victory, finally. And then Masema has escaped with some of his men. And in the final bit of the chapter, Galena is caught by Thorava, and her spirit is now broken. Having not stayed behind to kill Thorava, she is now her little pet. In chapter 31, we follow Elaine, who wakes up wondering what injured Rand so badly that she could sense it. There's been information that another member of the kin has been killed, and then the thief that was tracking Captain Millar has found where he has been meeting for the past few nights, and Elaine plans to go check it out because she wants to arrest the 2 Black Ajah that are there. She enters with 3 other Aes Sedai, each one are linked to a partner. And while about to capture the 2 Black Ajah, Elaine loses her ability to channel. They used a ter'angreal that can kill or stun at a certain distance, and more Black Ajah enter. Carianne is revealed to be a Black Sister, and Vandene realizes that Carianne was the one who murdered her sister, and so she attacks her, takes her down. One of the Black Ajah takes out Vandene and Sarita. Anyway, basically, Elaine's team of Aes Sedai have been slain in this very quick scene. Chapter 32, we get a Birgitte POV, which I love. I don't know why, but I just love her POV. She senses Elaine. The warders charge the house, knowing that their Aes Sedai have died. They can sense the loss of that bond. And then Birgitte gets the Windfinders to work with her to save Elaine. So she immediately gets to work. The Black Sisters are using lightning against the soldiers. One of them even uses balefire, using like a ter'angreal that channels balefire. But then one of the Windfinders takes out the woman who is using the ter'angreal, and they rescue Elaine. Going on to chapter 33, during her rescue, Camelin was being attacked by Aramel's forces, but now that they are outside of town, they decide to attack from behind, and then her soldiers also emerge from within Camelin and take over Aramilla, basically overpower her forces. After capturing the nobles, Elaine has secured support from 9 out of 10 of the houses required, basically to earn her the throne. She's super close. And in chapter 34, we go on to the POV of a man named Farik Karede. I can't remember how you say his name, but he's a Seanchan general, leader of the Death Watch Guard. He thinks that the band of the Red Hand, Mat's band of men, is actually led by Tom. He would like to rescue Tuon. In chapter 35, Elaine makes post-battle and success arrangements. Dylan states her support of Elaine as queen, which I thought was interesting. Other people announce their support of Elaine. Going on to chapter 36, Furyk, the leader of the Death Watch, and his guards arrive at Mat's camp asking after Tom. He recognizes women that he knows, and he finds out that Mat is actually the real leader. And Mat agrees to pass Tuon, or the responsibility of her safety, on to Furyk, as long as she trusts him and he can actually keep her safe. After an exchange between Tuon and Furyk, where she sympathizes with the loss of his wife and son, and he comments that, like, I always believed in you, supported you, and wanted to protect you. She says, yeah, he can be trusted. And then, during this chapter, I was just driving around getting all giddy at this part. Tuon states 3 times that Mat is her husband. And, first of all, she's not been saying his name. She's been calling him Toy, which I hate, and Mat hates it. But she calls him by his name and says that they are married. Basically, she has to say, he is my husband, 3 times for the Seanchan marriage ceremony to basically be final. And he has said it, now she said it, and now they are husband and wife, and Mat is in shock a little bit. And then after speaking together, Mat finds out that Tuon had, in a similar way, some foretelling of who her husband would be. In this case, kind of ethically questionable, because slavery, not kind of, very ethically questionable, but one of her Damani gave a foretelling about Mat regarding his Raven Ring, his memory of Arthur Hawkwing, and the Band of the Red Hand. She has some, like, the foretelling had mention of these things. But as they're talking, they decide neither will go with the other. They will both continue to do their own thing. But there's the sense of, like, the Seanchan may not always be in good terms with Mat's band, and so I thought, just like, I wouldn't want them to fight. They just got married. Anyway. But then as they're leaving, Furyk observes to Tuon that Mat loves her. And she says, maybe love could be a thing later on. Now in chapter 27, the final chapter, before the epilogue, there is a battle with the Seanchan and Mat's band of the Red Hand. He has another chance to show his battle knowledge using Eludra's fireworks, and eventually the Aes Sedai as they decide to help and kind of end the battle. Mat is now titled Highness by the Seanchan, which he hates because he hates nobles, and he laughs because he's like, well, now I am one, yay, but he is the Prince of Ravens now, so. In the epilogue, there's an awesome scene where Tuon enters and basically dethrones Sir Roth, who planned Tuon's attempted assassination. But then the epilogue ends with Pavara making a deal with Mazrim Time to have Red Sisters bond Asha'man as warders, and he agrees with the chilling statement and laughter in the room when he says, "Let the Lord of Chaos rule." Spooky! And Pavara doesn't like it, and she shouldn't, because that man's spooky and maybe shouldn't be trusted. I don't know. But yeah, that's the end. I made it all the way. I talked for 45 minutes. I hope I can edit this down and you guys will enjoy watching it. But I really liked this book. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm excited to keep reading. I am loving these characters and the events that are actually happening. And I appreciate you guys watching. Let me know your thoughts about this one. Where does it rank for you out of the Wheel of Time books? And yeah, I don't know. I just want to hear it all. And I will try to keep up with you guys in the comments. I will see all of you later with another video. Bye!